Sophie, thank you and welcome everyone, and thank you to everyone who joins me around the table for agreeing to take part in this. My ambitions for moderation is just really to give you all an opportunity to talk about what's a very important subject. From National Grid's perspective, I guess, we know from connecting renewable generation that utilities have sometimes struggled to keep up with the scale and pace at which people have wanted to connect to our network. So I guess this is an opportunity for us to think about how do we avoid getting into that situation. Certainly in the territories in which we operate, we are seeing a huge step up in the volume, both the number and the size and scale of companies that are wanting to connect to our networks with hyperscale data centers, largely driven by AI. And I guess my sort of theme for this would like to be one around cooperation. AI is definitely a friend to us as utilities. There's so much that it can do to help the way we operate our systems, we design them. So how do we work constructively with companies that want to connect to our networks? Because we know we're going to need to change and do things differently, and maybe try and avoid getting into some of the adversarial relationships we've had on the generation side with connectees. So I think it's a real opportunity for all of us to think before this tsunami hits us, how do we work constructively, creatively together to get people connected as quickly as they want to. I'm not sure sort of format for this. What I'd probably suggest is, simplest thing is maybe to go around the table, and maybe if people could just sort of briefly introduce themselves at the start, who they are, who they represent. So I should have started by doing that. So I'm Steve Smith, and I'm here representing National Grid. So I will pass to my right, if that's okay.
Thank you, Steve. Yvonne McIntyre, I'm Vice President of Federal Affairs for Pacific Gas and Electric Corporation. We are the electric and gas utility serving Central to Northern California.
Are we just going for intros and then, okay, so Sophie Westlake, I head up an international team in the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. Thanks.
Hi, Charlotte Higgins, Associate Director, Arup. I head up electricity networks at Arup. We're a sustainable consultancy.
Hi everybody, Sam Peacock from SSE. I look after strategy, regulation, corporate affairs. Good to be here. I mean, we're investing 40 billion over the decade in infrastructure, so this kind of whole conversation around AI, how you make it more efficient, is really, really important to us.
Paige Morse with Aspen Technology. So I lead sustainability activities with our customers. And so I'm representing the tech sector, software that you use to stabilize the grid, to better manage AI. That's the perspective I'll bring here, so thanks.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Beer from E.ON SE. E.ON is a distribution grid operator in Europe and one of the largest customer-centric companies in Europe, active in 16 countries from Turkey to the UK, with customer business and with DSOs.
Hello, my name is Fiona Howarth. I am the CEO of Optimise Electric Vehicles. We are the biggest EV-only leasing company, active in the UK, but we're also now active in the US as well. Also part of the Optimise Energy Group, of course, which are biggest electricity supplier in the UK, active in many countries, and also running a big renewable generation fund.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Train. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Emerson. We're a global automation company. We automate power plants all over the world. We help grid management. We're involved in all forms of power generation and movements. Also involved in hydrogen biofuels and carbon captures and some other spaces.
Hi everyone, Antonia Gavel, Director of Partnerships and Sustainability globally for Google. Obviously we're very focused on scaling AI as a company, but also bringing AI solutions to climate as well as managing the footprint of our operations in that context.
Hi everyone, my name is Zaid Al-Ansari. I'm here representing the Electric Power Research Institute, EPRI. EPRI is all about collaboration and applied research in the power sector. One of the things that we've just done recently is launched a program, a collaborative program called DC Flex. Some of you have heard about it. And it's really there to bring hyperscalers and utilities together to address the challenges and the opportunities associated with integrating large amounts of data centers due to the generative AI phenomenon that's happening right now.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jake Oster. I'm a director on Amazon's public policy team, leading our work on sustainability, energy, environment. Obviously, Amazon is AWS within Amazon is a large cloud computing provider, providing digitalization, storage, compute services, and of course AI to customers of all shapes and sizes, including the private sector, the public sector, and startups around the world. So here, of course, thinking about this from the perspective of an energy user and a data center operator.
Thank you, and National Grid, thank you for inviting us to the panel. My name is Mauricio Bermudez. I lead carbon strategy and intelligence at Accenture. Accenture is a global professional services company of 700,000 employees, providing strategy consulting, technology, outsourcing services to pretty much all of the Fortune 500. And so for the purposes of this conversation, well, we're helping our customers think about their AI capabilities, but also, helping industries that are exploring entering the data center space as new businesses.
So, welcome everyone. So, in terms of how I thought we might go about this in a sensible order, I thought it might make sense to start with, certainly from a utility perspective, our customers first. So, and Antonia and also Jacob was going to ask you to sort of give some views from the perspective of companies that want to connect to us. Then I thought it might be a good idea to go to Fiona after that and get a slightly different view about other sources of load coming onto our systems. Then probably those of you who aren't utilities, and I thought I'd leave the utilities to last, and we'll go around those of us who represent the utilities to sort of think and respond to what we've heard in terms of what customers and other partners around the table are telling us. So, Antonia, hopefully that's okay if I turn to you first just to give us sort of Google's perspective.
So many perspectives. I guess the focus of the conversation, as I see it here, is the energy sector prepared for data center and AI? I'll definitely touch on that direct question. And I definitely, given that we're at COP, right, in the context of global decarbonization, encourage us to equally think about, is the electricity sector prepared for the global electrification that is required to actually decarbonize the entire economy, which is what's necessary to achieve net zero, right? So I think these are conversations that, at least in my mind, are critical to connect, because what we see from the International Energy Agency is that the scale of electrification required between now and 2030, now and 2050, is enormous in terms of the volume of power for transportation, for industrial decarbonization, yes, for data centers, but also, to put it in context, data centers are about 1%, up to maybe 3% by 2030 of electricity demand. So the scale of the challenge, I think, is large and a really important one for us to be able to actually achieve the Paris goals. So I think that's my first, I suppose, constant challenge to ourselves in these types of conversations. If we turn specifically to data centers and energy and electricity specifically, I mean, as Google, we have a goal which we call, our goal is to achieve 24/7 carbon-free energy by 2030. So in every single grid where we're operating, we're trying to procure carbon-free energy on that localized grid globally, right? So everywhere from Europe, the UK, through to different countries across Asia. And in 2023, we're about 64% of the way there. Which means we have a long way to go. So one of the biggest, I would say, focuses for us and challenges is how do we procure that carbon-free energy in all the different grids and markets, and how do we partner with governments, with utilities, with policymakers to make that a reality? And I will certainly say that that's easier in some markets than others. So that's sort of one perspective to share. And what will it take? I think it will take an enormous suite of technology solutions. So of course we know that renewables are competitive in many markets around the world today. So we've done incredible investments, I think, with many in the sector to help, scale renewables. In 2023, we procured about 25 terawatt hours of renewable power. We signed contracts for 4 gigawatts. So on renewables, really trying to kind of drive scale, and also thinking about how we can invest in firm dispatchable power, geothermal technology, pulling the technologies and the carbon-free energy solutions that we know we need to actually be able to kind of continually operate and scale some of the solutions. So we have partnerships with an organization called Fervo to invest in geothermal technology in the US. It's already in operation now in Nevada. Similarly, have recently invested in SMRs as well, solutions, to try to kind of equally bring some of those technologies forward. So just to say, one, how do we scale access to the power, but I think importantly scale access to the carbon-free power to be able to actually meet the challenge of growth, but also do it in the right way. The other dimension, which I'll leave it at this, is I think the other big focus for us is we do believe also that AI has an incredible opportunity to enable climate action, optimization of industrial processes, information that can really help people make decisions, prediction. We are in a world of climate impact and crisis, so incredible opportunity on that front as well. And I think we should also kind of remember that dimension of the piece here as well. So I'll leave it at that. I know there's not much time, but just wanted to share a few words across those two dimensions.
Thank you. Jake, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, and following Antonia means I'm probably going to repeat a lot of what was said, so I'm going to keep it short and maybe just jump past some of that. But certainly agree with Antonia, particularly on a lot of the points about thinking about the increases in energy consumption and the projections around increased energy consumption with a broader frame and looking at transportation electrification, building and use electrification. I mean, those are all parts that we are thinking about at Amazon as well. We're not just a data center cloud computing company. Obviously, we have a large retail business. We have deployed more than 24,000 electric vehicles around the world to be delivering packages to our customers at this point, and are working. We're working to deploy more electric vehicles. So transportation electrification is near and dear to us as well as, and also thinking about building electrification. So all of that is how we are thinking about electricity growth and the importance of there being a clean and carbon-free grid and carbon-free power system that enables us to move forward. And as we are thinking about this at Amazon, we are guided very much by our own sustainability goals. We have a goal to be net zero carbon by 2040 across our business. We've been making good progress towards that. We've also had a goal to be 100% renewable. We had set that goal by 2030. Then a couple years ago, we recognized that we could get there a little faster and said we could probably meet that target by 2025. And then we were really pleased to actually announce that we beat the goal by 7 years. And we were able to announce this year that we'd met our target of being 100% renewable. As part of getting there, Amazon has been the world's largest corporate buyer of renewable energy for the last 4 years. Our global renewable energy portfolio today is north of 28 gigawatts, and we have projects in more than 25 countries around the world. So we've been very involved in, as a large corporate buyer of renewable energy. We've also, of course, been branching out into other technologies. We have several projects, I think more than a half gigawatt of solar plus storage now. We've been one of the largest buyers of offshore wind. We have a large offshore wind project off the coast of Scotland that's part of our offshore wind portfolio that we've been really pleased about. And then most recently, we've announced that we're making an investment and also signed deals towards advanced nuclear in the form of small modular reactors projects in the US. We're exploring a project in Virginia. We've announced a 320 megawatt project with SMRs in Central Washington. And we've also taken an investment in X Energy, an SMR startup, also sort of recognizing the need to deploy firm capacity and firming technologies onto the system to meet our energy needs. And then lastly, sort of again, to echo Antonia's point about thinking about the potential for AI, digitalization, and technology to support decarbonization and the overall technology that we're going to need towards that effort. We also, we feel very optimistic about ways to use AI towards those goals. We've seen some of that within our own four walls. We're using AI, and particularly within our retail facilities, to reduce waste in packaging. And we've had a lot of success in using AI and machine learning towards improving our packaging and how we think about packaging sizing for our projects. And then we've also worked with the power sector directly on using AI to improve the outcomes from projects we've been involved with. So I mentioned we have solar plus storage projects. We've actually been using AI in the storage projects, and one of them where we're using it to look at weather patterns and then, of course, the storage and dispatch and timing of that storage, so that it's able to optimize for the system needs, and then using AI to help improve that over time to continue learning. And so we've been able to see that take effect, particularly at a project in California, where during heat waves over last summer, it was able to really look at when is going to be the most important time to dispatch. So we've already seen some of that use of AI in the real world, and we're really excited about that, the outcome of those projects, but then also the potential as we see for AI going forward towards grid decarbonization and towards the power sector needs. So excited to be here. Thanks for hosting this.
Fiona, I mean, that's a natural segue to you. I think both Google and Amazon have sort of talked about seeing this in the wider context, and I guess nobody better than you to talk about the wider context.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Steve. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, picking up from Jake's comments around electrification of vehicles, that's a natural place for me to start. Obviously, we are seeing there's a huge amount of extra load potentially coming from electric vehicles as we're rolling out. We're expecting to be nearly fully electric vehicle sales and new sales in the UK by 2030. And of course, but that means actually by 2030 we should be able to have enough cars on the road that we could actually power the whole of the UK grid at peak times if we wanted to. And it's hugely distributed. So some people ask me, is this going to be a problem for the grid? And actually, this is a huge opportunity. We're going to have batteries on everyone's driveways. We're going to have batteries at depots. Actually, this is a huge energy storage resource that we're rolling out at pace. It's hugely exciting. And so that's going to be very distributed, very flexible, parked for 90% of the time plus. And actually, we've already got, smart energy tariffs where we're controlling people's charging so that we can use affordable renewable energy when it's cheapest. We've got over 1 gig of energy consumption flexibly there through the EVs that we've already got connected up to these tariffs. We've had vehicle to grid operating as well through over 130 cars that we've had doing that as in partnership with National Grid and other local operators as well. And so that's all working fantastically in terms of flexible load. In terms of data centers and AI, I think I was looking at some of the research, and Bain have done some research that's suggesting that by 2035 it could be 8% of energy consumption in the US. And so there's absolutely phenomenal numbers. In fact, that's versus 6% coming from EVs. So it's an extra 30% higher coming from data centers and AI. And again, though, I think this can be a huge opportunity when we look at investment and some of the things that the UK are very strong at. So, for example, we are excellent at wind power, and we have some really windy areas that we can put a lot of wind. And actually, we could have the cheapest electricity in Scotland. At the minute, we have a number of levies, and we have certain ways in which our energy system is set up today, which means that we're not necessarily taking full advantage of that. So if we look at TikTok, for example, TikTok have just announced, I think, that they're going to put some of their new AI data center in the north of Norway, where they have locational pricing and they have very cheap electricity off the back of that. So actually, if we could look at things like locational pricing in the UK, we could have, sorry, slightly jittery voice here, we could have the cheapest electricity in Europe, in Scotland, and actually have very, very cheap electricity to be able to help power the AI revolution that we've got coming.
Thank you. Mauricio, would you like to sort of give a view next?
I'd love to. And I'll probably build on a few of those things. So I think the first one I'd like to comment on in the spirit of collaboration that you've invited us here, Steve, is to have a hard look at the numbers. I won't comment on the broader electrification picture, which, demand from that, I completely agree, is going to be rapid and at a very large scale. But on data centers and AI, I think the numbers that we have looked at, the research that Accenture has produced, is still showing quite a lot of ranges. For example, in terms of the efficiency of the data centers and how that's going to progress in itself, driven potentially by AI. I think the jury is probably still out. And in terms of then the impact that the data centers, you were mentioning a little bit, around that, and yourself as well, Antonio, and that's going to create a cutoff point when the impact of the data centers from an energy environmental perspective might be offset by the gains that the technology is actually going to produce through optimization. And so I think that there's definitely something around getting a better handle on the numbers. I think the best ones we have right now are the IEAs. The recent research has been provided, but in terms of being able to better plan for this, we need better visibility on how the energy intensity of data centers might evolve over time.
Thank you. Paige, I was going to come to you next, if that's okay.
Thank you. Yes, I think so. Several thoughts here. First, so in the AI area, as a software company, we've been using AI for decades. I mean, it's been embedded in our products. But as computing power has increased, and truthfully, our challenges have become more complex. The application of AI is really necessary, and I think we'd agree, energy transition, there's nothing more complex that we have to deal with in a business sense. So a few thoughts on it, though, is one is that for industrial operations, as you brought up from Google, already people are applying this to make their operations even more efficient, better control of things, and then also how you manage energy across the system. And what we're seeing from our customers is as much as 20% improvement in energy efficiency for their operations. That's a huge gain. And these are existing assets. Of course, we need to do that. But then also maintenance of wind farms that you can use predictive maintenance to better get a sense of how they will behave. And then they're more reliable. That's a really big issue. And then for grid management, balancing the grid is a huge challenge with all these renewables. So you can use AI to be more efficient, be predictive about what generation you're going to expect, how then you plan that across the system. And as I say, I think we really need to be sharing these positive AI stories so people understand the value of it. So having said that, though, then there's some, shall we say, ways to better use AI, I think. One of our approaches is a concept that we call industrial AI, which is using it within the confines of where your question is. Not asking the big, broad question. I'm going to use a funny phrase. I think of it as joyriding right now. You ask some crazy thing of ChatGPT and you're off running. But it's wasteful. It's fun for a little bit, but it's wasteful. We instead say, let's solve this industrial problem within the confines of the physics and chemistry of the industry, the reasonable math. I mean, we put it in that context, much more efficient in the use, and then truthfully, better answers, which is also what we really need in the end, too. So, and one thing about data center operations, you're going to comment on this, I know. We're working with several companies right now to better do heat integration, because that's a big challenge in this space. And in fact, we use AI to design the digital twins, so we do better integration and then can use that in the facilities around there. So there's huge opportunity. We need to share the positive stories, I think.
Thank you. Charlotte, I was going to come to you next.
So I just wanted to start by picking up on a couple of Paige's points. The positive stories of AI and data centers. So we're working on a project with the National Energy System Operator in the UK, the Virtual Energy System. So this is an innovation project. It's the first digital twin of the energy system in real time that we're developing. And I think that's a fantastic example of an application of AI where we're using it to kind of access more capacity in the grid, to better manage the grid, to access sources of flexibility better. I also wanted to pick up on a point around whole energy system planning. So I think this is a great example of how we can use whole energy system planning beyond the energy space, looking at data, looking at the fiber network as well. So how do we work with fiber planning? How do we interface with urban planning as well? And overlay the electricity grid planning with fiber, with urban planning, with heat networks, for example. So using heat from data centers to create a more kind of optimized plan looking out to kind of 2030 and 2035 and beyond. So there's, yeah, to make a couple points there.
Thank you, Charlotte. Sophie.
Yeah, thanks very much. So as the government representation, I think I'll be the first to admit I do think we're at the cutting edge of the discussion on AI. But I did ask colleagues in the innovation sector for their broad remarks. And they pointed to the fact that we've launched a 3.7 million artificial intelligence for decarbonisation innovation program. And that has, and within that we've established a centre of excellence, which has a very sensible acronym, which gets to ADVICE is the acronym, so that's nicely done. But that has identified 7 areas where we expect to focus, and that includes unlocking domestic decarbonisation, enabling net zero infrastructure, maximising flexibility in energy networks. Networks, I think, has been picked up quite a bit. Decarbonising manufacturing inputs. Optimizing soil management. I was surprised by that one, not quite sure where they're going with that. And also minimizing methane in agriculture, which I was very interested in because methane is something that's been quite topical this week. I'm not quite sure how AI is going to help that. I'd be interested if there's any perspectives. I don't think we're thinking about robot cows, so I'm interested how on earth that can work. But I was also interested that from the stat that I got from my colleagues was that their analysis estimates that AI can help reduce global emissions by up to 4% against business as usual by 2030. And I just have a lot of doubt about that statistic because it strikes me that it's just tremendous uncertainty in the whole area about the extent to which, and I'm sure it could create that statistic, but it feels to me that there is, a little bit to what's been said, there's a lot of risk that it goes in an entirely different direction, and that actually countries are just so desperate to kind of attract this investment in AI into their countries without necessarily incorporating the sort of energy system design, which, as Charlotte was talking about, into the planning process. And I think, in the UK, we have this hugely ambitious target of getting to clean power by 2030. I'm sure the team is thinking hard about how we incorporate AI considerations into that, and certainly thinking about the opportunities. But it does strike me that there's a sort of tremendous risk there as well. That it's going to make things more difficult. There were a couple of other statistics that caught my attention in terms of how it's impacting countries. So in Ireland, apparently 1/5 of electricity is already being used to power the data centres, which is such a phenomenal amount. I think a National Grid apparently estimates, so you'll have to tell me if this is right, Stephen, but that data centres the demand of power by data centres will grow by some 6-fold in the UK in the next decade. I also noted that Virginia State apparently is projected to need 13.3 gigawatts by 2038, which is up from 2.8 due to data centers. So that's driving the whole energy requirement of the state, and that there is a risk that that's going to drive investment in coal in the state. So I think we've heard a lot about the interesting opportunities in AI, and absolutely want to see those come to the fore. And I suppose I underline this is not necessarily the government's position, but I'd like to throw open the challenge to the group. How are we actually going to safeguard that it doesn't just drive a massive surge in desire for power in a way that can't be serviced through clean power? Thanks.
Thank you, Sophie. Mike, I was going to come to you next.
Great, thank you. A lot of already great comments out there. So a couple of things that maybe just add to the discussion is, we are already in our power generation and our power transmission sectors using simulation, I think, in very effective ways to, again, get good efficiency from our operations, that type of thing. About 1/3 of the energy we put into the system only actually does a thing at the end of the system. I think everybody's familiar with that. If there was some way for us to kind of collaborate to get 5 points of efficiency gain out of our entire energy system, it would be nirvana, I think, and if we can figure out how to go after that. But we have to get a net AI gain, that the AI is an investment in energy. We need to get a net AI gain to focus on that. So I think orchestration is kind of going to be the next phase of this. How do we get the orchestration between all the different assets and players on the system and drive that? Again, AI can be powerful, but it's got to be aligned and connected somehow, and we got to think about that.
Thanks. I mean, you mentioned the DC Flex and the work that EPRI's doing. So I just wondered if you wanted to talk about that, or more widely around sort of EPRI's views on data centers and their impact.
Thank you, Steve. So from our end, I mean, obviously this whole AI data center revolution that's happening right now is a fantastic opportunity for us to all come literally around the table and understand how to get those challenges addressed collaboratively. It's a great opportunity also to understand how to accelerate some of the technology deployment that we're really looking forward to. You know, having Amazon invest in some of the SMR technology is not something I would have thought of happened 2 or 3 years ago, but you know, AI data centers is making that happen. Now, to address how to kind of work around this collaboration and take advantage of it is EPRI has deployed something, working with the hyperscalers, working with the technology providers, this program called DC Flex. And it's really aimed at 3 things. It's number one, you know, over the next couple of years, looking at what kind of tools are required by the planners, by the system modelers to effectively integrate data centers. Number 2 is having a framework in place to ensure that anyone who's looking at bringing in data centers are bringing it in a way that's standard, that's done in a way that's consistent with everyone else, making it efficient, more easy for others to do it. And the third one is just basically sharing experiences, allowing for some of those challenges that are being addressed right now, lessons learned, to become more visible so that everyone else is, you know, building on top of that. So that's really where EPRI is sitting. You know, a couple of weeks ago, the DC Flex initiative was deployed. Seed funders included NVIDIA, Microsoft, I think Google as well, and some of our utilities in the US. And we're looking at making that more global. So the more people we have involved in that, the more challenges are being brought forward to feed that collaborative, the more lessons learned are being put forward that allows us all to basically learn and benefit from each other's experiences. That's where really EPRI has been operating for the last 50 years. And you know, this is just another example of how we could bring that benefit together of collaboration.
So I was going to turn it to utilities now. So, I mean, obviously we've got representatives from the US, the UK, and then continental Europe. So just interested in the different perspectives and reflections on what you've heard and how you're seeing it. So, Yvonne, if it's okay, I was going to start with you.
Certainly, thank you. I have so much that is just we're already doing and taking into account because California, you know, leads the way in the states on, you know, being innovative and being the first kind of to adopt and address a lot of these issues. So we have estimated that by 2040, our load is going to increase by 55%, and that's largely based on electrification, transportation, buildings. But we look at that not as a challenge, but as an opportunity. We are already testing, you know, bidirectional charging, doing virtual power plants with existing residential solar and battery installations, so that, you know, it is very difficult to build anything new and big in California. So we're looking for what ways can we add capacity to the grid without having to build something new. And so EVs are our big kind of bet that's going to be a big thing to solve some of our problems. Right now, 1 in every 8 electric vehicles is located in our service territory. So it is a big thing that we're betting on. As far as looking at, so anything that's added, like with data centers and AI, is going to be additive above that 55% that we're already projecting. But in order to really kind of have a real feel for what's going to be coming on, we have to know that it's real. So what Virginia State is projecting, there's a lot of concern that there's a lot of shopping around among different states on, like, where am I going to get the best deal to build my data center? And so every state is taking that data, right, and thinking that's going to add to their electricity needs in that state. It's not real. That's not going to be what comes. And so we have started a project where we're requiring each of our counties to put in their applications for data centers all at the same time, so that, you know, we're going to know really if that's for real, if that's something that's really going to come online, and when and where, so that we have a real feel for what's the added capacity that we're going to need. We're part of DC Flex. We just announced that yesterday because we also look at data centers not just as a burden on our system, but as an opportunity, an added resource. We held our second Innovation Day yesterday. Last year was the first one where we had a bunch of companies come and pitch to us innovative ideas, technologies on how to improve the efficiencies in our system. Yesterday's Innovation Day was focused on AI. And so we made several announcements, one including the partnership on DC Flex. Another one, we held it in San Jose, which is the seat of Silicon Valley, that we are partnering with a developer to, it's both a data center and housing development that we will provide 200 megawatts of carbon-free electricity to power those data centers as well as the housing, and then use the heat from those data centers for heating and hot water to provide for the housing units. The other announcement we made was using an AI technology platform in our nuclear plant to better manage the data and forms. There's a lot of paper that you have to use in a nuclear plant, and so being able to have access and more efficiently deal with the data and the paper that's coming and also improve the efficiencies of the power plant. We have been preparing and planning and actually utilizing AI already in for reliability purposes. I think everybody knows PG&E's past issues with wildfires, so we're taking every step to make our system more reliable and safe. And so we've already been utilizing AI across the company for meteorology, planning, inspections, monitoring, and maintenance. That, coupled with all the other wildfire mitigation activities that we've undertaken, have reduced our wildfire risk by 93%. And so we're identifying other ways to further utilize AR in how we're going to manage our system, manage load, and I forget who talked about, being able to kind of identify when is the best time for people to actually charge their vehicles. We have a tremendous amount of solar in California. When the sun goes down, there's this huge drop in our capacity, and so when is the best time then for people to go in to work? They charge their cars during the day when we have cheap solar power really managing on our system, and so then at night they can go and if needed provide that power back to the grid. And right now we also have issues with capacity, like being able to connect new people to the grid because we don't necessarily have what they're saying their capacity needs are, their load needs are. And so, when we really kind of drive down and figure out when is it that they actually are going to need and how much power they're going to need at peak times during the day, do they really need to be doing that, during this time period during the day? No, you can shift their load to another time, and so also knowing exactly how much they're going to need at a certain time of year, so that we're not overbuilding, right? So because they're not going to need it 24/7, 365, and so being able to manage the load and understand each one of our customers' need to better meet their needs is going to be pretty tremendous. AI is going to help us with that, and so we've already been planning for that future.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thomas, I was going to come to you next.
Yeah, so I also would like to build on, or it's a challenge to build on all the great contributions of this amazing panel here. And to make my life easier, I want to build on the very first question from Tony about is the sector prepared? And just want to give an insight from infrastructure company from Europe. I mean, we are in the midst of complete rebuilding the energy infrastructure in Europe, and this rebuilding goes in an unprecedented speed at the moment. So more than 99% of all renewable plants in the EU are connected to the distribution grid, not to the transmission grid. Last year we connected roughly 250,000 renewable assets to our grids. This year it's 500,000, and with this exponential path it goes on. And by 2030 we will have 8 million decentral assets connected to our grids. It means every 8 seconds we connect one plant to our grid. And this is a program which would be absolutely not feasible without end-to-end digitization of all our processes in the grid all over Europe, without employing AI, without employing digital twins to manage the grid in real time. And at the end of the day, I mean, just to put it a little bit into proportion, in Bavaria, which is a small part of our European grids, there are more solar installed than in all sub-Sahara Africa. Yeah? And it's all integrated and managed and taken care of, that the lights are kept on. We had to double our investment commitment in our 5 years rolling plan to 40 billion euros, and most of that goes into the grids. For us, a data center, by the way, is strongly part of the solution, not part of the problem. Solution because all of these investments in the grid, they also need a denominator, a dilution factor for people otherwise it becomes an affordability problem. Yeah? So we need someone who pays all the infrastructure at the end of the day. And however, I mean, even we don't feel as the bottleneck. The problem, we need an educated discussion where all these data centers will be built. I mean, all our requests go to, we want to put our data centers into Amsterdam, to Paris, to Frankfurt. And if we say, for example, it's impossible to provide you a grid connection in Frankfurt area for a data center for the next 7 years, it's not on us, it's simply on approval processes, government processes, let's say employment of public. So we needed an educated discussion. Don't put all the data center where the, let's say, the big internet cables are. Maybe we have to think about what is the problem easier to solve. Rebuilding parts of the internet infrastructure according to the power grid. It's maybe the cheaper and the easier way than the other way around. Yeah, so we also need an educated discussion about what are the right locations, how will the data center infrastructure has to look, let's say, with the power grid as a partner, right? Not only as a, let's say, a downstream necessity at the end of the day.
Yes. I think you wanted to touch upon this, Steve, but perhaps still very early days, but your comments there, Thomas, raised the question of a lot of this might happen behind the meter. And we're starting to see those plays in the Middle East, in the UK, in North America, where there's enormous opportunities for placing this type of infrastructure closer to the data grid. And co-located with an energy source and producing behind the grid. So I'm definitely not an expert in that front. We're working on it at Accenture, but maybe some of the ones who are better placed to comment on that might like to say something.
I was just going to say, well, first of all, I'm going to apologise to Sam later because I've hopelessly failed in my moderation because poor Sam had told me he needed to get away and I didn't get to him in time. So I will make sure I do that. Just before sort of throwing it open to anyone who wants to come in on anything that's been said, I mean, just sort of some reflections and also sort of a national grid view. I mean, hearing everyone speak, I think there is a huge risk, and I've seen this a lot in my 30 years in utilities. We're very good at creating problems. Well, if data centers are a problem, it's a pretty high-class problem to have a bunch of customers coming and saying, I'd really like to use a lot more of your services, please. So I think we need to remember that at the end of the day, these are customers sort of saying, we'd like to use your services. So I think there is also, as I said, because of the technology part, there is a huge source of optimism. I mean, I agree with Fiona. You think about how many of these developments are actually symbiotic rather than problematic. The amount of batteries that will come through EVs. I mean, I'm always struck living in London, and I can't help it because I'm a nerd from utilities, but I look down my street over the last 10 years and I can do the maths of how many, megawatts of battery capacity there is with a bunch of us who actually don't drive our vehicles during the week. And I just think, wow, if we could have all this hooked up to the local distribution network. And I think that will be true in many cities. So I think for me, as I said in the intro, the real opportunity is to think about how do we innovate together, because we do have to accept that, our general utility processes for connecting anyone were built for a different era, and also for different volumes of connections, both in terms of the number of people wanting to connect to us in a typical year, but also the scale at which they want to connect. I also run National Grid Partners, and there we're investing in sort of cutting edge firms, and that's where I really see where AI can help us. I mean, we've got, companies that using AI can get 30% more power out of our existing lines, help us plan new lines faster, help us with operations and maintenance. So we really do need to see this as what a great opportunity to connect customers to our network, whose underlying services will then help us, drive our networks to, to bigger and better things. So I just sort of wanted to inject that tone of optimism. It's not to pretend it will be easy and that some of the problems aren't real if we get it wrong, but there is really an opportunity here to work together. And, if the tech firms have proved anything, it is their ability to disrupt and innovate, as Octopus has, and we probably need a bit of that in the way we think about these large connections, and some new thinking and some challenge there. But at that point, I was going to hand it over. We've got about, I think, sort of 10 minutes left. So if there's anyone who wanted to come back on anything that's been said or other thoughts, very happy to do that. I'm not going to get round you all again, so you're going to have to, let me know who'd like to say something or who had a comment in response to something that's been raised.
I'll say 10 seconds on methane. So we're using artificial intelligence already. Duke Energy look at satellite data and help them optimize the field force for dispatching remediation of leaks that are identified in the gas distribution grid. And another client I can't mention, but we're doing the same in upstream oil and gas production. Looking at combinations of data, IoT data, low-flying drone data, sensor data, and satellite data, also to remediate the fugitive emissions, but also optimize the payments to carbon tax systems and so forth, so delivering real value.
Sure, and also I'll build on it. There were a couple comments around heat reuse from data centers, and I think you mentioned the housing project, and I think there was somebody else who mentioned the use of heat reuse, and I also just thought I'd share an example from our own data centers, and I think there was also a comment around energy use in Ireland. We have a data center region or a cloud region in Ireland. One of our newer data centers there in South Dublin is actually providing reused heat from the data center into the district heating project. It's the first district heating project in the country. And so a new AWS data center is connected into that district heating project. And by doing that, it's estimated that should avoid about 1,500 tons annually of carbon emissions. So we've seen some of the benefits. It's a customization effort. It's, I think as the California example, sort of building that housing project and the data centers all in tandem and doing that together. We've seen that partnership and that customization be the way forward in being able to do this project in Ireland. But certainly excited about the outcomes of this project, and that being another example where we've seen the actual physical infrastructure of the cloud, of the AI computing, being able to provide additional benefits to that community where that data center is located.
I want to talk a little bit about co-location, and I've been at PG&E for almost 3 years now. Before that, I worked for an independent power producer. So it's like the IPP world is really the ones that are going and driving these deals for co-location. I think, and again, understanding the U.S. power sector, I mean, we're all very different depending on what region you're in, what state you're in. So, some things are going to work some places, but not others. So the most recent FERC decision to deny a co-location application was much more for the reason that that was in the area of the country called PJM, where there's severe capacity constraints already there. There's not enough load. There's a lot of coal plants that have shut down. Some gas plants are looking to shut down. And so the request was to take a portion of a nuclear plant, the power from that plant, to feed, and was it Meta? I can't remember which company it was. And so FERC denied that because of just concerns that you are pulling existing power out of a market that's already severely constrained. So there's a lot of concerns of like what was going to meet that, what was going to come back in to do that. If you're going to build something new to power, that data center, that's more acceptable right now. And so you got to think through, again, what market you're in, what state you're in, and how that's going to play before in the regulatory structures we're in. So I'm favorable to co-location coming from my IPP world, like the competitive market world, but it has to work depending on what market you're in.
I think just building on that point and some of the points made before, the name of the game, I think, here is going to be partnerships and innovation in how we think through and design some of these partnerships for investment as well. One, as was said, it is location specific on one hand in terms of the needs, but also the types of structures that can be created. So Google has indeed been trying to innovate in terms of tariff structures to be able to work with utilities to bring on that clean power and think creatively about kind of the partnership in terms of how we bring that additive capacity to the grids as well. So partnership, I would say, is a critical piece, and fit for purpose partnerships in the locations. And I think maybe just building on your point as well is, I think there is an incredible opportunity for innovation. I mean, the electricity sector, the energy sector, is not famous for fast transition, but this is the world that we're in. Where I started is we need a huge electrification shift globally. So I think we need to sort of be in that mindset of a very rapid innovation, investment in an electricity system like never before in order to meet global decarbonization challenges. And I think the opportunity, at least we see, is that the Google and the tech companies are certainly, yes, as you said, a customer of the sector, but also a customer who have 24/7 carbon-free energy commitments that we're very committed to trying to meet. So how can we really be a bit of that injection of energy, both in terms of having the real conversations around bringing more stability, integration into investment in the grid systems, investment in the sector, but also doing that with that objective of scaling clean power across the markets as well.
The other thought I was just going to add as well, I mean, there's a danger here that again, going back to my theme of seeing things as opportunities, not problems, there's a danger here as well. I mean, we know that whenever people invest in clean power and it starts to scale, that costs come down. So a lot of what you're doing and are going to do in terms of investing in clean power, I think over the medium term will be net good, and there'll be spillover benefits. So there's always that danger that somehow people fear that you're buying up green electrons that others would want to use for other purposes. But I think that's the wrong way of looking about it. And certainly things like investments in SMR, well, that's a technology we've all been intrigued about for a long time. So I mean, it's great to see private sector as well as government money going in to say, can we really pull that technology through, and is it viable? So I think you do have to sort of see this as net positive in terms of just driving down sort of costs and opportunities for greening the power sector, and not sort of over focus on this as a problem. But I don't know, Fiona, I don't want to jump you, but I wonder if you got sort of perspectives on that, because you think more widely about these things as well, so as Octopus. So
yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. This is the biggest transition. I 100% agree with what Antonio was just saying there as well. We need huge electrification transition globally. We are redesigning our energy markets. We've already started on that journey with demonstrating a lot of the flexibility as well that you were describing there, Yvonne, here in the UK, but also in other markets, and just taking that through to redesign everything with AI coming online. We could just use it all to take us to a much greener economy.
Okay, well, look, I think we're about 40 seconds out. So given that we're sort of ending on a spirit of optimism, which is where, as you can tell, I wanted to steer this conversation, so we didn't all convince ourselves this was all a big set of problems that were going to, destroy our Herculean efforts to get to net zero anyway. I'm kind of suggest that we wrap up there, but I would just like to say a huge thank you to all of you for coming, for your contributions, and I hope for the audience that was an interesting and valuable debate on a really important topic. So thank you to all of you.